It started with a single morning, the kind that seems ordinary until you open your garage door and freeze. There it was, a large, obnoxious SUV parked directly in front of my garage, blocking my car in. At first, I thought it was a simple mistake. Maybe my neighbor had guests. But as the days turned into weeks, the mistake became a daily ritual. And the person behind it? Everyone calls her HOA Karen. Karen wasn't just your average difficult neighbor. She had a presence that seemed to command attention, a personality that thrived on control, and a penchant for micromanaging the entire community. But blocking my garage? That crossed every boundary. Each morning became a tense guessing game. Would I be able to leave for work? Or would I be trapped again? And worse, the confrontation that followed. Every incident felt like walking into a battlefield where rules didn't seem to apply to her. I tried reasoning, politely asking her to move. I even left notes. At first she ignored them. Then she began responding with snide comments and lectures about community rules and safety. Hazards. It wasn't just about parking. It was about power. Karen wanted to make a statement, and I was at the center of her crusade. Every interaction left me more frustrated and more anxious. Soon I realized I wasn't the only one. Other neighbors whispered about their own run-ins with her. Some had received warnings from the HOA for minor infractions. Others had their mailboxes tampered with or had friendly reminders about lawn decor. It was like living in a neighborhood under the rule of someone who had rewritten the rule book entirely for herself. I knew I had to escalate the situation. So one morning, after yet another blocked garage incident, I called the police, not in anger, but in hope of documentation. What they revealed shocked me to my core. Karen wasn't just meddling with me. She had an entire history of tickets, complaints, and violations that stretched over years. Parking infractions, noise complaints, even minor safety violations, all recorded meticulously in her file. The police explained that while her actions were disruptive, they had yet to cross the legal threshold. But they also warned me, with someone this relentless, ignoring the problem wasn't an option. I realized then that this was no longer just a garage dispute. It was a full-blown neighborhood saga, a clash between individual rights and obsessive control. With me caught right in the crossfire, every day became a careful calculation. How to leave for work without confrontation, how to keep my car safe, and how to navigate the fine line between standing up and escalating, a war that seemed inevitable. The next morning, I sat with a cup of coffee, still processing what the police had told me. Karen's name wasn't just a neighborhood nuisance, it was a legal headache waiting to happen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Years of parking tickets, fines, and repeated complaints that painted a picture far darker than the charmingly controlling neighbor facade she tried to project. Every infraction was documented, every warning logged, and yet somehow, she was still at large, still free to block my garage like it was her personal playground. The police explained that Karen had been cited dozens of times for parking violations, alone, parking too close to intersections, blocking driveways, obstructing fire lanes, but that was only the tip of the iceberg. She had been fined repeatedly for community rule violations, from excessive signage in her yard to failing to maintain her property, according to HOA standards. In short, Karen was a repeat offender, and her track record showed a pattern of blatant disregard for rules when it suited her. What struck me most wasn't just the number of violations, it was the audacity behind them. Every ticket, every complaint, seemed to embolden her rather than deter her. She thrived on chaos, using her reputation as an involved HOA member to justify actions that would leave most people embarrassed or apologetic. And here I was, trapped in a cycle, where my daily life was being disrupted by someone with no fear of consequences. Determined to fight back, I began documenting everything. Photos of her SUV blocking my garage, notes of every confrontation, even videos of her interactions with other neighbors. I wanted to create a timeline, a concrete record that could not be dismissed. Each day, the tension escalated. I felt the weight of living in a constant state of vigilance, wondering what Karen would do next. Would she escalate to a more aggressive tactic? Would she try to involve the HOA against me? Or worse, would she involve law enforcement again with false claims? The more I learned about her ticket history, the clearer it became. Karen wasn't acting out of necessity or fairness. She was calculating, manipulative, and relentless. This wasn't about enforcing community rules. It was about asserting dominance, about making sure that anyone who challenged her would feel the pressure. And with her meticulous record of prior violations, she had nothing to fear. The system seemed powerless to stop her. And I realized that if I wanted peace, I'd have to outsmart her with strategy rather than confrontation. This chapter of discovery left me shaken, but also more determined. Karen's shocking ticket record was more than just paperwork. It was proof of a pattern, evidence of the storm I was living under every single day. But what came next would shock me even more. The police revealed how far she had pushed boundaries and how neighbors had started fighting back. After uncovering Karen's shocking ticket record, I thought the worst was over. But I quickly realized that her actions weren't just about me, they were affecting the entire neighborhood. Conversations at the mailbox, whispers over the fence, and frantic texts from neighbors revealed that Karen had been turning our quiet community into a battlefield for years. People were frustrated, stressed, and fearful of drawing her attention. The more I spoke to others, the more it became clear. I wasn't alone in this fight. Neighbors shared stories that seemed almost unbelievable. One family had been fined multiple times for leaving a small, decorative sign on their lawn, something Karen claimed violated obscure HOA rules. Another neighbor recounted being scolded for having a slightly overgrown hedge, while Karen herself had left piles of untrimmed branches on her own property for months. It was infuriating. Rules for everyone else, but exemptions for her. The HOA meetings became tense, with Karen dominating conversations and portraying herself as the voice of reason, all while undermining anyone who dared challenge her. Determined to take action, I proposed a plan to gather community evidence. I wasn't just documenting her blocking my garage anymore. I wanted a comprehensive record of her patterns. Videos, photographs, and signed statements from neighbors slowly painted a picture that even the HOA couldn't ignore. What we discovered was shocking. Karen had not only ignored multiple rules herself, but she had actively used minor HOA infractions as a weapon to intimidate and control. It became clear she thrived on exerting power over everyone around her. Despite the tension, we started noticing small victories. Other neighbors, inspired by my documentation, began speaking up. Some filed complaints about her repeated violations. Others attended HOA meetings prepared with evidence. Karen, who had previously seemed untouchable, started showing cracks in her confident facade. Her smirks faded when confronted with proof, and for the first time, she faced scrutiny that couldn't be brushed off. Still, the battle was far from over. Karen's reaction was predictable. More aggression, more calculated maneuvers, and even attempts to manipulate HOA rules in her favor. Each blocked driveway and confrontation felt like a test of patience and strategy. I realized that dealing with Karen required both vigilance and clever tactics. It wasn't just about proving a point. It was about reclaiming a sense of safety and normalcy for myself and the neighborhood. By the end of this phase, a critical realization hit me. Karen's actions were about control. Yes, but they also revealed the fragility of a system where a single, determined person could manipulate rules for personal gain. The next chapter would expose the full extent of her obsession, revealing details that the police hadn't yet shared, and the shocking lengths Karen was willing to go to maintain her grip on the neighborhood. By this point, the entire neighborhood was on edge. Karen's relentless control had pushed everyone to the brink, and what had started as a personal struggle over a blocked garage had evolved into a full-blown community crisis. The police reports, documentation, and neighbor testimonies had created a mountain of evidence. But Karen's response was as calculated as ever. She wasn't just going to give in. She wanted the last word, the final act of control. One morning, I returned to find her SUV parked once again in front of my garage. My initial reaction was frustration, but I quickly remembered the lessons from the past months. Documentation and strategy were my weapons. I took photos, recorded videos, and noted the time. By now, I had developed a systematic approach to every encounter. The more meticulously I recorded, the less room there was for her manipulation. As tensions escalated, the HOA finally had no choice but to intervene. Confronted with overwhelming evidence of her repeated violations and manipulative tactics, Karen tried to defend herself, claiming she was enforcing community standards. But the records didn't lie. Each ticket, complaint, and documented harassment painted a clear picture. Karen's obsession with control had become a threat, not just to me, but to the entire neighborhood. For the first time, she faced consequences that couldn't be ignored. What happened next was astonishing. The HOA imposed restrictions that limited her ability to enforce arbitrary rules, and the police made it clear that further harassment would result in legal action. Neighbors, once fearful, now felt empowered. The small victories that began months ago had snowballed into a collective stand against Karen's reign. Conversations that were once whispered in fear became open discussions about fairness, respect, and the importance of community. Reflecting on the months of struggle, I realized something powerful. This wasn't just about a blocked garage. It was about standing up against manipulation, documenting truth, and refusing to let fear dictate daily life. Karen's obsession had exposed weaknesses in our neighborhood system, but it also showed the strength that comes from unity and perseverance. The final showdown wasn't just legal, it was personal, emotional, and transformative for everyone involved. In the end, Karen's daily blockages, manipulative tactics, and shocking ticket history became a cautionary tale for the neighborhood. While the scars of tension remained, there was a newfound sense of control, peace, and empowerment. The battle had been long, exhausting, and at times infuriating, but it proved one undeniable fact. Even the most relentless opponents can be challenged with patience, evidence, and collective action. And now, the story comes to a close, but the lessons of vigilance, courage, and community will remain. If you've ever dealt with an HOA Karen or a power-hungry neighbor, drop your story in the comments, hit like if you support real truth, and subscribe now for more shocking real-life stories like this.